welcome to Resolutions for Recovery. This show is dedicated to the education for substance use disorder for both the person struggling with the disease and for their families. And today we're going to really concentrate on families. And we have Mr. Anthony Rizzuto, my buddy here from Families in Support of Treatment. And we're going to talk about two very important subjects. The first one is the walk this Sunday the 24th of September, Marjorie Post Park in Massapequa. And we're going to have the information up on the screen. Please come and join us, unite with Long Island to walk for recovery. It is open to anyone that is struggling, family members that are struggling with a loved one, people that unfortunately are in the same club as I am that have lost someone to substance use disorder. And let's just come together and really, I think I like to look at it as celebrate life.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that that's a component of it. You know, originally when we had a discussion about doing a walk, it was actually brought to my attention because we were going to Washington every year for Fed Up, and then somebody said, why don't we do something right here? And that was when I started putting together the one in Farmingdale. And, you know, and I think that the thought process was some kind of tribute and remembrance of those that had been lost, and, you know, some level of resources for families who maybe are entering into that world or don't want to enter into that world and want to know what can they do, and, you know, in terms of prevention message, you know. So that was a part of it. And then also kind of, you know, making sure that we have some entertainment and family fun stuff, like we had the face painting and stuff for the kids.
And we're going to have that on Sunday also.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
So there's activities for young children,
absolutely.
You know, so mom and dad can kind of have a little peace and quiet. The kids can have fun. It's going to be a beautiful fall day.
Yeah, I think for me, the big piece that I never want to get away from is really, because awareness is a part of it, but I think that a lot of us have done a lot of work in raising awareness. I think it's time to go from awareness to action.
Yes.
And I think especially with, you know, the timeline that we're dealing with when we're dealing with somebody who's addicted to painkillers or heroin, especially with fentanyl. You know, you've heard me say this a million times. You know, I can count, I've been in the field for 15 years, and I can count how many people I've seen overdose from alcohol and how many people I've seen overdose from cocaine. But when it comes to painkillers and heroin, you know, like, it's just incredible, the numbers. And so we don't have the luxury of time. So for me, one of the hopes in this walk is that the first year we did it, we had 1,000 people.
Yes.
Last year we had almost 800 people. And the reason I say that is because I think the more people that we can get and the more awareness that we can bring to this, and the more that people that have the power to make a difference start understanding that this is something that's important to my constituents, I think we'll be able to move the needle. Yeah. If you look at our advocacy, you know, attempts, you'll see that the years that were election years were the years that we got the most done.
It's an election year.
Last year it was very, very disappointing to think how hard we all worked. And, you know, the Senate passed a bunch of bills, but when it came to the Assembly, not only didn't it pass, but they didn't even bring it to a vote. And that's sad to think that people are able to take the summer off, right, having not completed anything in this, and us walking away with nothing. So I'm hoping this
year... You know what, I'm going to say it a little bit different way. It's nice to be able to not even bring it to a vote. People and families that are struggling with this disease, it's life and death. We don't get a break. Yeah. We don't get time off and say, oh, well, let's table that and bring it up next year. There is no next year sometimes. So it's imperative that we get back in their face.
Yeah, we get the sense of urgency because we're in there, right? Yeah. Every day, you know, phone calls of this one just lost their son. And so we get the sense of urgency. And the question is, how do we have them get that sense of urgency? Because I think, you know, look, I can tell you that I had this conversation one time. Heroin epidemic was around in the 70s. And a lot of people, in particular people of color, will say we never got the attention that it needed to get. And I think they're 100% right. I think once it starts affecting other groups of people, then all of a sudden, you know, it started getting some attention. So even with what we're dealing with right now, I think, it's sad, but I think that when you see that a person that has influence gets impacted and they get behind the fight, but why does it have to be that way?
Why does it have to be that way?
Why does it have to hit home,
Yes.
right, for a person to be willing to get, behind it? And it's just, I guess, the way it is.
It's just politics. It's, there's no rhyme or reason, right? It's
And-
unfortunate that it's just politics.
And we've got some great champions here on Long Island. We've got some people that have rolled up their sleeves.
Senator
and worked
John
hard.
Flanagan.
Yeah.
Saw Senator Phil Boyle at the recovery dance the other night, and I loved what he said. And Phil is a gentleman, and he's been a champion, but he ran for sheriff. He was favored to win, and then he said, God has other plans for me, and I have more work to do exactly where I am, and I'm not going to stop on this issue.
Right.
Even though he's no longer the chairman of that
Right.
particular committee, he's willing to
He's
to
a
go to
respected person.
He is very
was,
respected.
He was at the concert at Sunday night, and he was very, I consider him one of the people who's rolled up his sleeves. And
Yes.
I remember back in 2014 when he traveled around the state, doing all of those different task forces. And when we went up there, we were well received,
Yes.
and so I think, when we look at some of the Long Island contingency, I think that a lot of us would say we were happy with, there was with the stance that they took, and there was only one particular person who ended up coming around, but it worked out. It worked out well, and now it's surprising, when we went into this and trying to get this package of bills passed, and to see the Senate pass it, and then for the Assembly not to bring it to a vote was a little concerning. And I think we'll have to take a look at what do we do differently this year to make sure that the outcomes are different.
Well, I think what we do differently is meet Assembly people in their offices down here and never stop. Just every month while they're still down here, keep going back. We don't always have to go to Albany. You got a more intimate relationship with them, so to speak, in their home office is impactful. But this year too, thank God, Governor Andrew Cuomo has also been a champion for us.
No doubt.
So when the governor wants something done, it certainly makes life a lot easier in the Senate and the Assembly.
Well, that's what made it even more frustrated last year, because he put a package of bills forward.
Yeah.
So that's the part that, we got governor, we got Senate, we got Assembly. And when the governor, got behind these bills, I thought this was going to be a lot easier. And
it'll be a very different year this year for them when they want to bring something forward, but that's the games that they play.
Right. And look, I think as far as the idea of visiting them here, I think that's not a bad idea. I think the struggle that most of us have is that we all have jobs.
Yeah.
We all have several jobs, and we
Yeah.
do this kind of on the side.
I know.
None of us is that our primary focus, right?
Correct.
We have all these other things going on, but we feel passionate about this issue, so we jump in and we add it to the 6 other things we got going on. So
Absolutely.
if we had, the time and the resources to
And
be
the
able
luxury,
to say,
yeah, that's
think
a
about
luxury.
Right. Think about when we've gone up to Albany, right? We'll go up there once or twice a year, right? There's 6 or 8 lobbyists there that are there every day.
They're
from
every
different special
single
interests.
day,
So
yes.
it becomes challenging. So you hope and pray that you're able to get the message across to them, and that they connect. And I'll tell you, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. There is no doubt that the game changer has been the families
Yes.
being willing to let their voices be heard. I did a filming this morning, and the thing I talked about was the idea of when the families were willing to come out, because you know how it is, right? I'm preaching to the choir here, the shame, the guilt that people associate with, oh my God, what are people going to say? And when people were able to work through that and say, you know what, I'm angry and I'm not sitting down, I'm coming out. And when we did the one in Farmingdale, my wife was, I mentioned this, my wife was tearing up. And I said, what's the matter? She said, there's like a sea of people, because all of Melville Road was full of people. And who had a sign of their 17-year-old, of their 23-year-old? So this is a Sunday afternoon in the middle of the sun, and people are not behind closed doors.
Right.
They're willing to come out. And that, I believe, is the change.
And that's only was 1,000 people. Unfortunately, you and I both know the reality of how many more people are struggling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty frightening. Out of 10 people that are stricken with substance use disorder, only 1 in 10 gets help.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah, yeah.
You
no,
know,
I heard
so
Rob
we
say
have to
that.
bring the other 9 out of hiding, so to speak, and or if the one person, and now I'm preaching to the choir, if the one struggling doesn't want help, at least if we make the family unit whole again, and we make them healthy, and we make sure that the siblings and or other young people in that family don't choose the same road, because when you're not getting attention because mom and dad are so focused on the one child that is sick at the moment in time, good attention is as bad attention is as good intention.
Yeah, I think
know?
you're spot on.
Yeah.
I think, listen, consistent with the disease of addiction is denial, that I don't have a problem, leave me alone. And in the beginning, it's not like a person gets involved in substance use disorder and their life all of a sudden falls apart. For the most part, you know, it's usually a process. So it's not uncommon that they wouldn't want help.
Yeah.
So I think when we can educate, empower, and support families, right, we have a better chance at doing that and saying, okay, listen, here's some things to look out for, and here's some things that you may be able to do and maybe not be able to do, because that's a part of it.
Yeah.
You know, family members don't cause addiction, but there's no doubt that the behaviors can contribute, right, to recovery and
Absolutely.
can contribute to addiction, you know?
Without a doubt.
So the more that we can do that, and I think...
And I always feel the stronger the family gets, there is no penetrating that box, that membrane that's surrounding them, because now I'm not triggered by my loved one's addiction and when they push all those buttons. And when I have my own toolbox and can put them in their place, and they are not the manipulator, they're not the puppeteer controlling everybody in the family, they may seek help a little bit sooner than if it's left untreated.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we have made some difference in, we still have a lot of work to do, but I think the key piece to what we're discussing right now is the stigma. And I think the stigma that was and has been lessened, but we still got a lot to do.
We have a lot of work to do.
But when you look at, 1,000 people being willing to come out in their community or in their surrounding communities, or when you see people that are willing to get on a TV camera or in a newspaper or in a, to me, that encourages other folks who said, oh my God, I can't believe she's doing that and that she's going to do that. I wish I had the courage to do that, and everybody's journey is different.
Absolutely.
And everybody's got to find their own path. I think for me, what I'll tell you is that in my experience, secrets grow in the dark and they die in the light.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when the stigma can keep you paralyzed and keep you from seeking help, both the person with the addiction as well as the family member. So then you're left to your own devices. I'm going to just try harder. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to take away the phone.
Right.
I'm going to check the emails. I'm going to remove the keys. I'm going to, and you try to do all these things and you start losing your mind,
Yeah. And from a family member, you're scared to death. So let's just throw fear in there.
Yeah.
You're scared and and I equate it to some families. Some people that are diagnosed with a life-threatening disease will freeze and say, well, I don't have to do anything about that yet. So it's the same kind of feeling. If I go and I find out really what the truth is, then it's going to be worse than, it's just fear.
Right.
Fear.
And I think,
we have to take that off the table and say, I understand you're afraid, but let's one step at a time.
And helping people know that substance use disorder is a disease. There's science upon science that shows how the brain of the person who struggles with substance use disorder reacts differently.
And for a teenager, let's just put that out there. So especially with young people, their brains are not developed yet. So it's going to be that path is much quicker than in an adult over the age of 25.
Absolutely.
So so for any parent that's watching right now, not my kid, not my school district, let's just keep first and foremost today, 3 kids were arrested in Plainview, Old Bethpage, one of the good school districts, and they were arrested with what, $500,000 worth of money, pills, and they were 18-year-olds.
And the commissioner said it best, he said, when you're arresting somebody who's 18 years old, right, and that means that they've started much younger than that, that means that the fatality when a person is 15, 16, or the damage, like you said, when the brain is first developing and you're introducing a substance into it, wow, it makes so much more of an
Yeah.
impact. And I like the fact that you talked about, because we know that people don't start with heroin, right? So we know that there are all these other substances, and with substance use disorder, the part of the brain that deals with the spike in dopamine, right, gets triggered not just by heroin. Alcohol triggers it, marijuana triggers it. I mean, there are a lot of natural things that trigger it, and their brain is more
The
sensitive.
thought of alcohol, marijuana, and heroin trigger it.
Yeah, they trigger a part of the brain that makes the cravings go up.
Yeah.
And sometimes a person, I've heard many a patient say, like, I can't believe it. I was doing well, and all of a sudden the thought came into my mind. You've heard Dr. Dewey before. Dr.
Yes.
Dewey does a study with people who, like coffee, and he goes in the next room as he has them in a PET scan. He goes into the next room, doesn't tell them he's doing this, and he brews a pot of coffee. And just the smell of the coffee, you watch their brain and you see their brain start to light up. Now, they don't even realize that they've been triggered.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, wow, I really feel like a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting stuff. It's really interesting.
It's very interesting stuff. But, when we talk about kids, they know, listen, when you and I grew up, you didn't think to answer back. You didn't think about a lot of things.
I like
but
my
kids, yeah, I like my teeth. I like the wall. I like the door on my bedroom. But they seemingly have or they think they have a lot, and they do, honestly, they have a lot more power within their family. They know how to push buttons. Mom and dad working 2 jobs. It's a whole different generation that has
Right, but
come forward.
But I'll tell you something. In fairness,
Parents are still the number one influencer on their kids' lives.
yeah, the environment. In fairness to both the person, the young person, and/or the family member, the reality of it is, the world is a different place than that.
Absolutely.
And when
Everything
you
has
look at,
changed.
when you look at
Yeah.
constantly being plugged in, and the stress level of people, they're looking to release.
Yeah.
They're looking to find a way to be able to shut down. And sometimes people will turn to a substance to be able to deal with some of the stresses in their life. And so I think that when you look at the change in the world that's happened, I always talk about the 14-year-old today as opposed to the 14-year-old in 1975, and what did they experience, and what did this group experience. And I think that it's not uncommon, because the stressors have gone up at a much quicker rate than the
Yes.
coping mechanisms have.
Yes.
So, like, I know you're a big fan of holistic approaches, as am I. Like, why aren't we teaching yoga, breathing techniques? Why aren't we teaching people how to self-regulate, right, through healthy means? And the answer really is that when people take a pill, it works, and it works fast. So that's what ends up happening when a person is looking for relief from anxiety. They're anxious, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed out. And how many people do you hear today that will tell you, I'm working 2 jobs, I'm working 3 jobs, I'm working this, I don't have time to do that. Yeah, I got to do that. I stayed up until 2 o'clock. So with that, how do you find some kind of relief? So I think the best way I can put it is that the stress level and the stuff that a human being has to go through has increased exponentially faster
Yes.
than the coping mechanisms have.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
So that's part of treatment, right? So treatment is, how do
That's
we
part of
teach them
treatment.
to-
But then what I would also, please let prevention and let some evidence-based curriculum be introduced to your young children.
Oh, no doubt.
That can teach. They never mention drug and alcohol in kindergarten, first, second grade. It's building those coping skills. It's building those protective factors in a young life, so that when they are 12 years old, and school increasingly gets more difficult every year, and then I am, mom and dad aren't helping me with my homework, I am responsible for my own projects, that I know, what, I need to turn my phone off, I need to take a break, and I need to go, maybe I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to ask my mom and dad, can we go take the dog for a walk? I need a break. But that's already built in.
Right.
So
Oh,
we're
I'm
still
in total
talking,
agreement.
so all of these things, it's changing the community as a whole.
Norms, the
Yeah.
norms. So yeah, and I think what you're speaking to, because I really look at this issue that we're dealing with as two separate ones. There's a connection between them, but one of them is, how do we save people today?
Yes.
And then two is, how do we prevent people from getting into this world so we don't need to save them tomorrow?
Yeah.
And I think what you're speaking to me, is really a longer term plan that would reap tremendous benefits, right? Because if we, and unfortunately as a society, we are a reactive society.
Yes.
We're not a proactive society.
Correct.
So unfortunately, when the devastation hits, that's when we react. And I know our friend Jeff Reynolds, will always say, we gave it a head start. We gave it a many-year head start.
Yes.
So,
and John Venza.
right. But we could be saying this in 10 years from now.
Yes.
If we don't put these things in place now, I don't know if it'll be heroin or painkillers, but I don't see addiction going away.
Addiction won't go away. So, the substance is really unimportant.
Right.
But if we don't change our 5-year-olds of today, we can do everything on the one side, but we're still always going to have, it's always going to be that seesaw, and it's always going to go down the other way.
We don't give value when you think about and I'm not in the school world in terms of administration, but when you look at the curriculum, right, math, English, languages, this and that, right, there's a certain curriculum, and a lot of the times when there's school budget discussions, right, the things that often seem to be on the cutting block are the sports,
Yes.
The recreation, the art, the music, and it's, so that kind of looks at it and says, I think that from my perspective, I don't know that people understand the value of those things.
Yes.
In making a rounded individual, because problem solving and self-care, I think that would bring us a long way.
I think that they do understand the value of those, because when a school budget doesn't pass, and the first thing they do go after is sports, because then the parents are going to say, no, we need that, and they're going to get everything that they want, and you're going to pay more for sports. So
Hence our property taxes.
That's exactly, that's our school taxes. So they do know how to play that game. But I think there's enough studies out there that when you give kids also just some time during the day to be a kid and to have zero, to go outside and lay on the grass and look at the sky and do nothing, you're teaching them something really valuable.
Right. And I think there's something to say about the digital world too, about being plugged in and the impact on the brain of. So I think that, I don't know.
Steve Jobs never let his children have an iPhone, iPad, or anything else. So let's think about that, because he knew the addictive qualities of all of that. And I'm not saying I think technology has to be a place, but it can't be the babysitter. It has to be very strategically monitored.
Right.
It can't just be because they want it.
So, just to bring it back to the walk. So, I think in terms of the walk, I think, there's a lot of different, so to speak, target audiences. There's a lot of people that can benefit from it. If you're the mom, or if you're a person who doesn't have this issue in your life, but you don't want to stand by and watch your society, your community being devastated, come and be part of this.
And also, if you're part, especially for anyone that lives in the vicinity of Massapequa, come out, because it's going to be a nice day, and be part of your community.
Right.
Does it matter what it's for? Just be part of, hey, you live around the corner from me, our kids go to school. We should come to this park more often.
Right.
Because we're going to go from Marjorie Post Park
to
John Burns Post. Get to know the parks that are that we live on Long Island. We pay enough property tax, let's put it that way. We might as well enjoy what is part of our environment. Get out of the house.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of different people that would benefit from it. Look, I can tell you, and you know this, the feedback that we've gotten over the last couple of years, always people had a memorable day. To me, a couple of the things that stick out, I remember the first one, there was an 8-year-old there. And, it was kind of surprising to see this little 8-year-old. She says, I'm here with my mommy. She's been clean 2 years, and it was just so cool, right, for her mom to have had this conversation with her, and her understanding, that that this is part of their family lineage and kind of educating them from a young age, and also seeing that, hey, we're all out here together,
Yeah.
you know, and so there's definitely a lot of benefits to it. There's supposed to be some great live music, which is
Great
great.
live
We got a
music.
nice lineup of speakers. We got food. We got t-shirts.
We got food. So for Anthony Rizzuto and Linda Ventor, we got food. You bring food and they will come, right?
There you go. And it's not
dessert.
a long time. It's three
hours.
to 6. You're probably looking at the meat of it is between 3:15 and probably 5:30 is really
Yeah.
the meat of it, because some of it will be registration, some of it will be winding down. And in that time frame, you know, we'll have a tribute to families. We'll have a beautiful walk. We have a nice lineup of speakers. We have about 4 or 5 different live entertainment acts.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be a real
Live
positive
music,
event.
face painting, games for the kids.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go around to resource tables. You're going to get a bag that will have all pertinent information. If you so
big.
choose to use it, if you need it yourself, or maybe you know somebody that could really benefit from using that. Just because you're not stricken, I'm going to say 9 out of 10 times you already know somebody that needs that information. So,
Yeah,
be a blessing to someone else and pick it up for them.
I don't know if our view is jaded, but I can't imagine anybody that lives on Long Island
That doesn't know
has
anything.
not been impacted either directly or indirectly, that has a good friend who it happened to, or their loved one, or I mean, everywhere I go. I mean, everywhere.
Every time there's an arrest, every time there's an accident where a car crashes into the side of a building, really, do you think those people aren't under the influence, or the side of a house? So every time we get on the road on Long Island, we're impacted by substance use.
Absolutely.
We're going to be right back after these messages.
My age is 18 years old and my name is Evan.
My name is Sean and I'm 19 years old.
My name is Justin, I'm 16.
My name is Angelica. I'm 18 years old.
Marijuana, and I was 13 years old.
Marijuana, and my age was 13.
The first drug I ever tried was marijuana, and I was 12 years old.
It was marijuana and I was 11 years old.
Yes, and that escalated to promethazine, lean.
I began to take pills like Xanax, Percocets.
I began using other substances such as pills and alcohol.
I then went on to cocaine and pills and quickly progressed to heroin. I was 13 years old when I first started using heroin. I had aspirations of going to an Ivy League school, and that quickly, within a year or two, changed. I stopped going to my classes. I stopped going to school altogether eventually. All my friends were kind of just dropping me.
I started getting in trouble in school, eventually kicked out. I got in trouble with the law a lot.
I wasn't really hanging out with a lot of sober people, just people that use. I overdosed at 15. I've been at Outreach for 5 months. Outreach honestly really helps you. It shows that you're honestly worth something. And it's possible to become sober if you put in progress. But it's not just gonna be handed to you, you really have to want to change. Inpatient, you can't just leave. You stay here and you have to deal with it. That's what I feel like a lot of kids need.
In a long-term facility, the counselors get to know the resident better, and they get to actually work with them more than in a short-term 28-day facility. And it really gives kids a chance to work on themselves rather than being rushed through a program, just to be thrown back into life, going back into the same old bad habits that they were doing before.
Coming in here, I couldn't believe how long I would have to be here, but after a couple months, talking to counselors, I kind of came to the realization that I need a lot of time and work to repair everything I've done.
The things that we get taught here, it really does help you in life, and it gives you a different perspective. It's very important for a kid to have a family involvement in treatment so they don't think they're alone in this. We communicate on a better basis than how we used to. We understand each other more. And that was from the help of outreach.
They come every Wednesday night for support group. They come to a group every other week.
They come to peer support group to discuss their problems also. My relationship honestly has got a lot better. Because I remember my mom used to never want to say anything to me because she would be scared of my reaction. I'm starting to realize in here, like, I really have to take advantage of the fact that I have her still.
When I was about 14 is when my parents realized that I had several different problems, such as behavioral issues, and the behavioral issues kind of stemmed from my drug use. I began caring less about myself and others. Outreach has really made me realize how important family is. If I was out of state in a program where my parents were not involved, I would have never been able to strengthen my relationship with them. My father told me that I've inspired him to make changes in his life, and that meant a lot to me. I've never heard my dad be inspired by something before, and I was just proud that it was me.
Welcome back to Resolutions for Recovery. Anthony Rizzuto and I are talking about the walk on Sunday at Marjorie Post Park from 3 to 6, completely free event, food, games and things for the kids to do. Please come out and support your community in the fight against substance use disorder, for prevention, for anything and everything that you can imagine. Just come out and support your community and your neighbors.
You know, I would just add one thing to that. Say thank you to the sponsors as well.
Yes.
The reason that we're able to do everything that we do, meaning food, T-shirt giveaways, bags, live music, and
a lot of community members come forward and donate food and contribute money for the T-shirts, for everything that we need to do to get this day done.
Say thank you and support the sponsors, because they all put in a part in order for us to be able to provide this for free.
Yeah,
it's
a beautiful thing. What can you get for free on Long Island? Not too much.
No, not a lot. Maybe a little sunshine.
Maybe, and we're going to have that on Sunday. We're between hurricanes, so we're good.
I can't believe they were talking about like 80 plus.
I know.
In terms of degrees. So
it's going to be beautiful, and it won't be that warm in the afternoon. By 3 o'clock, it'll start to come down a little bit.
Yep.
The other thing, Anthony, let's talk about is patient brokering.
Mm-hmm.
So for anybody watching, let me try to simplify. When you are struggling with the loved one in substance use and you seemingly don't think you can get them into treatment, and we'll give you a bunch of really places to go that you can get treatment. You should always be able to get treatment. There is, unfortunately, an unscrupulous group of people that have found a way to make money during a public health crisis. And I know Rob Kent, who is the general counsel of the Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse for New York State, has issued a very strong warning. So basically, patient brokering is getting money, putting heads in beds for cash. And we need to put a stop to that, because it's not necessarily the correct treatment. It may not even be good treatment. And unfortunately, I've, had to acknowledge people into my club that unfortunately have sent their loved ones down and out of state, and they have not returned home alive.
Yeah, I think that, a couple of thoughts on it. You're right on in terms of some people making money by, having arrangements with treatment facilities that'll pay them. And, I think that those people need to be held accountable. But I'm going to take it one step further, because I think what makes the wheel go around is the person that's willing to pay somebody to send someone to them. So I think if you are a person that is, paying per head for an individual to send someone your way, I have concerns about that. The other thing is, the other real concern when it comes to this patient brokering is the idea that there are people that are making determinations about what a person needs who are really unqualified to do that.
Yeah.
Some of these folks are people who are in recovery, and listen, the issue is not that they're in recovery. I'm in recovery. The problem is that me being in recovery doesn't qualify me to determine, to give a diagnosis, to determine what a person's needs are, to do a thorough assessment. That doesn't qualify me to do that.
I'll say the same. When I help families, I'll hold your hand, I'll cry with you, I'll talk things through with you, and I will bring you to a treatment professional that can assess what your family needs. I have no idea what you need, and we want to match treatment to the individual and to the family, and I'm not capable of doing that. And I'll stay in my own lane, but I'll hold your hand. I'll be your life jacket, through it, and be, cry with you and do all of those things.
Right.
That's my job.
Right, exactly. And we all have our different
we
area.
all- right.
And like one of the stories that I had
You
heard.
you are a social worker. You're a CASAC. You're a certified, right, alcohol and substance abuse counselor. So you can make determinations.
Because of that, and because of working under an umbrella of, with a medical director and everything, but, like the story I heard a while back was a gentleman in recovery who had gotten sober, who was doing well, and it's not uncommon, is on fire about helping other people.
Yes.
Which is it's
Which
almost
is a beautiful
Oh,
thing.
it's awesome. So he wanted to help a particular individual. This happened to be out of state. He helped this individual. He was able to get this young man into a place, and everything was great. And as he was leaving, one of the people from the facility said, "Hey, come here, I want to talk to you." And he gave him an envelope. And the guy didn't have any idea what it was. And when he opened it up, there was $1,500 in it. And then he said, anytime you have someone, think of us. And so the person
Wow.
did it. The person did it from an altruistic,
Yes.
place. The young man did it from an altruistic place. He found, and a lot of people in recovery find gratitude in
Yes.
being able to help other people that are struggling with illness. So then when this money got thrown into it, then it started clouding and muddying the waters a little bit. And that's one of the things we're seeing. So we're seeing an issue with people that are going into, whether it be 12-step fellowships or whether it be family fellowships, or whether it be social media, and professing that they can help, right? And really are not qualified to do
Correct.
that. I think they do have something of value, which is a lived experience, which is, you can never minimize a lived experience.
Absolutely
And-
not.
And they probably have an ability to engage somebody who might be closed off, to a person. However, they cross a line when they start assessing what that person needs and start setting them up with a place where, like, I'll give you an example. It's not uncommon that when a person struggles with addiction that you will often find co-occurring disorders. Sometimes you'll find medical or other issues.
Yes.
And then based on what the person's needs are, then you would say, you know what, that place isn't equipped to deal with co-occurring disorder, so it wouldn't be a good fit. So I would send them over there.
co-occurring, maybe some
mental health. Yeah, it
illness.
could be mental
Yeah,
health.
okay.
And it's not uncommon that when you struggle with addiction, sometimes it was there before you even picked up the drink or the drug. Sometimes the abuse of substances can mess with your brain chemistry and
Absolutely.
lowering dopamine. So that's really the concern here. I had a text a couple of weeks ago. I received a text from a therapist asking me if I knew of this particular group. And what she said to me was she was very concerned because she found out that this person couldn't even walk, but yet they were being put on a plane to be sent out to a place. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm concerned about. Like even, I'm an ARISE certified interventionist. And I will tell you that, there are people that profess to be interventionists, and when it comes to interventions, there should be safeguards. There should be things, because interventions can go south real quick.
But let me ask you a question. So some folks that are really doing this patient brokering, saying that they're interventionists. An intervention, as I understand it, takes a long time to put together. You have to have a lot of pieces in place, the family ready, and other things in place before we just jump on the person struggling.
Yeah, there are
with
different
substance
models.
use.
There are different models, you know. So, like the model that I'm trained in is a process. It's not an event,
Right.
So it's about getting the family as well as the identified patient,
Ready.
getting them in a place, right? And you're not just working with the patient, like, and you're not just. The goal is not just to get them in treatment. It's about getting the whole family to recover and then following them for a period of time and supporting them while they're going through this. So when the person does get to a treatment facility and says, you know what, I'm out of here, I'm leaving, and picks up the phone and calls up the family has a
Their own-
system in place.
Yes.
Where they can, how are we going to handle this, right? What
Correct.
can we do on our end of it in terms of boundaries, in terms of speaking as a group? So there's a lot of pieces to it. And look, I'd like to believe that some of the goals of people are good, but unfortunately I've heard otherwise. I've heard of crazy numbers like $5,000 and this, and and it really is concerning when you think about people in a very, very anxious time of their life and a very desperate time of their lives,
And that's the key
and
word
somebody
there.
being opportunistic and taking advantage of that.
And telling you everything you want to hear. And I'll tell you, as a family member, I'm going to get them into a place and then feeling like I could sleep and rest. And that's wrong. That's just wrong to do. And, unfortunately, I've had the education of a lifetime, really, and involving the family is the key piece, really, to, I shouldn't say that, involving a support group that the person struggling with substance use can fall back on, because having that network underneath them when they do come out will create a recovery environment for them.
Right.
Because relapse is not uncommon, but that doesn't destroy recovery. It just means a little, a hiccup along the way.
Clean date changes. So
Yeah.
to kind of move this to the next step, like we talked about awareness and then action. The one thing I would encourage anyone who's in that position, because here's the typical story. The typical story is that you find out that your loved one has a problem, you start ramping up your efforts as a loved one, to try and help them, fix them, save them, rescue them, right? You're trying to do anything you can
Yes.
that's our innate, as a father, my protector and provider, kicks in, and I want to take over and fix
And you
and
wanna
help
take
and
control.
save. Yeah, that's a big part of
Yeah.
it. So when that happens and everything I'm trying doesn't work, then I'm looking for hope. I'm looking
Yeah.
for answers. So when someone comes around, I'm latching on to anything that can give me some sense of hope. So what happens? So a person tells me that they can help me. So here's what I would say to families out there that are listening. I would say a couple of things. Number one, I would encourage you to ask around, right, and get some information from people who are qualified and people who have done this for a while. Here's a few of the questions I would ask you. Number one, are you licensed?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
If so, what license do you have? Understand that there are people who, one of the things I've heard recently, there has been a great movement towards creating peer recovery coaches.
Yes.
And peer recovery coaches are great in helping people that are engaged in treatment and helping them along this process of recovery.
Absolutely.
They serve an invaluable role. It's awesome. However, that in and of itself, right, doesn't, a peer recovery coach doesn't have the ability to give a diagnosis and determine this kind of stuff.
And or determine what the appropriate level of treatment for them.
Right. So I think as a family member, I think you would want to take a look at what is this person's credentials, if any, do they have them? The second thing is who do they work for?
Yeah.
Right. The third is what's the compensation like, right? And
Just ask for transparency.
yeah, and I think also who do they send people to? Does everybody that they deal with go to one particular place? Do they have a bunch of different places? Do some research on the places that you're looking at.
Are they asking you to get an out-of-state insurance policy for
Well,
your
that's a
loved one?
whole nother thing.
Yeah, that's all. But
yeah.
that's something I just want to plant the seed there.
Well,
too.
with that, let's go there then. With that, one of the biggest things that I've heard from people is the idea of, but they told me that it was covered. and then they're getting a huge bill, or right, having a person send you somewhere, right, and having you believe one thing and then it being different. So I know I've shared this a million times. I had one mother that came to me with a bill for just urines, toxicologies, just for 1 month, $83,000.
Despicable.
I had another father who came to me.
So let's just $83,000 for just urines.
Right.
The cost of a 28-day program in New York State, about
$16,000, $17,000.
Let's even say $20,000.
Right, $20,000. You know,
So 4 times the amount
just for the urines.
for urines.
Right, right. So that was one mom. Then I had a dad came to me with a bill for $67,000, which a portion of it was for the treatment that the insurance didn't cover, that he was responsible for, and then I think 13 or 14 of it was the urines. So anyway, I think the point is know that, make sure that as a family member that you do your own due diligence.
Yes.
I would say if you ever had any questions, right, we have a New York State organization that provides licenses, that has some level of responsibility to make sure that what's happening within their system. You can always call Oasis. They have a field office right now. But even more importantly,
OASIS is the Office of Substance Use.
Office of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Services.
And they have a website.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great stuff there.
.com, and you can go in there, and there's a drop down, put in your zip code, and even if you put in your zip code and there's not a bed available in the immediate vicinity, there's a lot of treatment in New York State.
Right.
So a lot of folks, right, Anthony, will say, I'm glad they're going to Florida. They're going to be away from all their triggers. You know what? They can also go to Saranac Lake, which is 6 hours away from Long Island, and they'll still be in New York State, but they'll certainly be away from triggers.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, look, I know of a lot of people that leaves the state, and I'm not going to use a big brush and say everybody out of state is good or not good. I think that there's good and bad everywhere.
I think there's good and bad anywhere.
The concern is that you make sure that you know what it is that you're getting. We dealt with this back in 2014 when often a family member would say, oh no, I already called up my insurance company. I have the benefits. And I consistently found myself saying having the benefit and being able to use the benefit are two different things, because there was this idea of meeting criteria and how long. So even though your policy says 28 days, do you really get 28 days? So there's a lot of different pieces, and I would say that as a family member, like I'm, we're in the trenches with this stuff. But for a person who knows nothing about this, let's say I work in a profession of, let's just pick heating and air conditioning, right? And I come home and I find out that my loved one's got a problem, whoever that loved one is, right? I have no knowledge of this whatsoever.
Correct.
So where do I go, right? Where do I go and who do I trust? Because I know that there's some people out there that are snakes. I know that there are some people there that are really good. How do I distinguish one from the other? And that's really the challenge. The challenge is, and throw on top of that this sense of desperation that I have, that I just want to save my kid. I want to help them. I want to do whatever I got to do to get them the help they need. And that's the challenge. The challenge is that the family member who has very limited knowledge of this just knows that they love their loved one and that they're terrified and they want to get them help.
Yeah.
And they seem to keep running into roadblocks. So all I would say to whoever's listening out there is make sure that you ask around, do your own due diligence, but don't limit yourself to one person. Find out some people that are reputable, that have been in this field for a long time. People who have to deal with a canon of ethics, right? So, so for instance, I'm a licensed social worker and I'm a CASAC. As a CASAC, you have a canon of ethics. As a social worker, you have them as well. Your license can be pulled like that.
Correct.
There are things that you have to adhere to. So just making sure that there's some level of oversight of what's being done, and it's not someone going rogue and doing what they want to do because that's what they feel like doing. So anyway, those are some thoughts.
The Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse licensed every treatment facility in the state of New York. So they are held to a standard.
Oh, they do audits. They go
They
in.
do audits,
They
they're-
don't give
they're
you a
held.
license unless you pay. You know,
Correct.
there's anyone that you go into a place, right? You know that there is some level of oversight. So, you know, we always talked about, you know, is it a licensed facility? So here it's Oasis. There are other areas where it might be CARF accredited, or it might be JACO, or it might be other things. But you want to make sure that there's some governing bodies that are overseeing the
Yes.
work that's being done there. You know, you don't want anybody just putting out a shingle saying, "Oh yeah, look at me. This is what I can help. I can do this." All right. So tell me how you're qualified to be able to do that.
That's
What is
all.
it that you do?
Just know your rights. I think, you know, when we go to buy a car, we certainly investigate and we're going to shop it out, correct?
Yeah.
You're going to shop out and get estimates for everything that we do in our life.
Right.
Don't, you know, you need to find somebody that you can count on that can get you through this.
And that's a challenge. So listen,
It is
I
a
can tell you,
challenge.
as a person in long-term recovery, I don't really care who, where, what, when, right? The important thing is, how do we keep this person alive? How do we give them an opportunity to change? How do we give them a forum where they can find help, right? So that they can go ahead and make the necessary changes in their life. And not only them, but their family. How can we support them? How can we help them to help themselves? And that's, for me, ultimately, that's how I came into this field. You know, I was in a completely different field. Having gone through my own trials and tribulations, coming out on the other end, I felt like I was the luckiest human being on this earth that, you know, I wasn't, I didn't end up in a psych ward, I didn't end up underground, and I didn't end up, you know, doing years in prison, right? Because those were all possibilities.
Absolutely.
And, you know, somehow, some way, in my opinion, God shed his grace on me between an incredible family, between 12-step programs, between treatment, between supports, you know, somehow, some way, I stand in front of you here today, 24 years later. I was given that opportunity. I would love to see other people be able to have that opportunity.
To live.
And absolutely.
and to live a great life.
You know, we don't need to, you know, it's money is like the root of all evils.
The money is, you know, and when you follow the money, it's not a good thing. So, you know, you really do need to know your rights. And if you have any questions about that, I would encourage you to call the Office of Alcohol and Substance. You know, where do I go in my community?
Yep.
Where can I go and talk to somebody that can show me, you know, and they may very well come and sit and hold your hand.
Right. So even if
I would even venture to say, if you're really desperate, go to the police station because they'll be open to help
the
you
police
too.
station, how about not going to local government? So let's say that maybe you can't or don't want to for whatever reason, because I think Oasis is a great option, but why not call local government, right?
Yes,
So
your
the
local
commissioner
legislator.
of drug and alcohol in Suffolk, the commissioner of drug and alcohol in Nassau.
Or your local legislator.
Yeah.
They're going to help you find somebody
And
in your
I
community.
think they will guide you in the
Yes.
direction of who is it that can help you. I just think that you have to do your own due diligence.
Yeah, because we've seen an awful lot of damage come out of that, and unfortunately, you know, we don't want to see any more damage come out of that.
And then the sad part is, you know, when you see people who are, I had one case where a person said, the insurance is not paying, you need to send us $10,000. And she's like, I don't have $10,000. So this is a quote. This is what the person said. You're going to let your daughter die? This is what this person said to him. This is the kind of stuff that we're dealing
Yeah.
with. And that's just shady,
It's just
dirty,
wrong.
ugly,
Yeah.
you know, and there's no place for that. And in my opinion, anybody like that should be prosecuted and should be, you know,
Absolutely.
pay the ultimate price for
Absolutely.
it. And you know, and I would also, you know, take a look at the people who do pay for those services to be done that way, you know, because I think,
And we're talking about the owners of the facilities.
yeah, I mean, that's what ends up happening, you know, when you have people that are being compensated, you know, per head. I think
Listen,
that
you
that's
know, your motivation to pay your bills for the month become very different, and when you start to make the kind of money that they're making, that becomes, and you're in recovery, that becomes its own drug.
Yeah, on the FIST Facebook group, we get a lot of different stuff sent to us, and there was an article that someone sent a while ago from somebody in Florida who, I don't remember where he was from originally, might have been Massachusetts, I'm not sure where he was from, but he created this whole empire. And then you mentioned before about the insurance, so you know, I'm getting stories of people being told that you can't continue to live here unless you get high again, so that you'll meet criteria to be in here. I'm hearing stories of, you know, people taking out insurance policies in areas where they never lived there before, so they're committing fraudulent act. I mean, there's just so much dirt going
so
on,
much
you know,
dirt going on.
to be able to do this, and then you think about it, right? And what's the message, right? Because a big part of of
Stigma.
recovery is honesty. It's about changing who you are as a human being, and you know, if you
we're
got to
getting
live that
into
way.
some shame and stigma with the disease, you know, that there are dirtbags coming after this, and it's just wrong. But, you know, in the state of Florida, they did pass laws.
Oh, yeah.
So it's going to be reciprocal to New York State. So Florida is shutting its doors on these practices also, because it's not treatment down there. There's a strip mall. You get to stay in a sleazebag hotel, and then you get transported for outpatient.
I would be hesitant at painting there are a lot of them. There's
a lot of great,
but I want to
you know,
make
Florida
it clear
Center
that,
for Recovery,
right,
great place.
Right, exactly. So that's why I'm saying, like,
Right.
I'm hesitant at
Lakeview.
using a big brush
Yeah,
like
no,
that, because there are some agencies that do things the right way, and I guess the challenge for the novice person is, how do I know who's legit and who isn't legit? How do I know who's, so, you know, at minimum, check out accreditation, check out licensure, call up, find out, what would you do over here, right? Better Business Bureau. I mean, there's just different ways to go about
I think also when you access your local government, or certainly state government, and you get connected with someone who is above board, so you as a treatment provider, or, you know, you do work for Seafield out in West Hampton Beach.
Absolutely.
Not everybody's appropriate for Seafield.
No, absolutely.
And do you send them someplace else?
Absolutely.
So you just
Absolutely.
need somebody that puts the needs of the person first. Not you, the needs of the,
You know, it's
the
interesting
patient.
you bring that up, because the funny thing is that, you know, sometimes we'll get a complaint about, you know, somebody coming to us, and we'll do an evaluation, and we'll determine that this person needs, we can't meet this person's need. You know, perhaps the mental health need is greater than what we can provide, right? So we will go to make a referral and send them somewhere else, and they'll get really upset because, you know, like, what do you mean? And because we know what our limitations are. That's one
Correct.
thing you want to know is,
That's
what
one
are your
thing you wanna
limitations,
know.
and be able to set them up. But we'll help to get them to a place
And
they
you're
can
truthful.
meet their needs.
You could take them,
Right.
but it's not going to help them move forward.
Right.
So Sunday, September 24th, 3 o'clock, Marjorie Post Park, Massapequa. Be there.
Or be
Looking
square.
forward to seeing everyone. Let's make it 1,200 people on Sunday. Thank you, and have a blessed weekend. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought that was good.